Hello and welcome everyone to this short video on how to do a peer review. My name is Florian Schneider and I'm putting together this series of academic skills videos for my undergraduate students who have to do, for instance, peer reviews as part of their coursework. But whether you are a student at a different university or a grad student or maybe a seasoned professional, there's probably tips in here that will be helpful for you as well. In fact, experienced academics also sometimes struggle with peer reviewing. I myself have certainly received the one or other unhelpful peer review, and I frequently see in my job as a managing editor for an academic journal how difficult it sometimes is for even the professionals to get it right. So if you're a student and you find this hard, you're in good company. Before we get started, a quick caveat on my end. My own field is in Chinese studies, which sits at the intersection of the humanities and the social sciences. So I cannot really comment what peer reviewing looks like in, for instance, the natural sciences. I assume that probably a lot of the principles I'm going to be talking about are fairly similar and maybe even universal. But if you work in one of those fields and you have experiences that contrast what I'm saying, or maybe that confirm them, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section. Alright, now that we have that out of the way, let's take a look at my favorite top 3 do's and don'ts of doing a peer review. So my number 3 no-no is letting your ego guide you. And I know, when you're reading something that doesn't agree with you, it can be quite infuriating. Maybe the author is writing in direct defiance of your favorite theories. Maybe they're using methodologies outside of your comfort zone, and maybe something about their style of writing makes you wish you had a direct line to the author so you could give them a proper dressing down. And sure, if an author willfully ignores important approaches or if their writing gets in the way of understanding, then that is something you should probably remark on. But remember, the author's work isn't about you. So before you go burning down their work, ask yourself whether your criticism really applies to their article or if it is simply motivated by your own preferences. Also, remember that no academic contribution can ever be comprehensive. Before you demand that authors integrate more literature, ask yourself whether that literature is truly relevant to the discussion. It may very well be. But in most cases, it might be enough to recommend certain readings, if not for this paper, then for future projects. But if you're just trying to show off your own breadth of knowledge, then that isn't exactly helpful. Neither is demanding that authors cite your own work, though it can be worth suggesting this if your publications are indeed helpful to the author. But here, again, make sure you're not motivated by your own self-interest to see yourself referenced more often. I'll say it one more time, peer reviewing isn't about you. And if it actually is, for instance because a scholar you're reviewing is explicitly dismantling your own work, then reviewing it is probably a conflict of interest, and you should tell the person in charge of the process that you're not comfortable with this specific review assignment. So yes, letting your ego get in the way is a major thumbs down. The third most important do on my list is helping the person who asked you to do the review. Your job is to assist them by giving them either an outside perspective or a specialized expert opinion on what to make of this contribution. That means that your feedback should contain a concise summary of what that contribution actually is. And you should be balanced in your assessment, pointing out both what is great about it and what isn't quite so great, or at least not yet. Be honest about what motivates your verdict, and if you suspect you might be biased in your assessment, maybe because you're coming from a different field or you subscribe to a different ideological position, make that clear. No one is ever really objective, but we should be transparent about our personal positions and how they might color our assessments. And remember to remain fair. Try to judge a contribution only by what it actually tries to achieve, rather than by what you think it should achieve. So, being helpful to the editor or to your course convener? Yeah, that's a clear thumbs up. Next on my list of don'ts, letting your privilege blind you. Of course, we all want to maintain a certain level of academic standards, and if someone is simply producing work of questionable quality, then that needs to be addressed. But we are not all in the same starting position. Not all of us work or study at elite institutions with fantastic access to funding, and not all of us may have the same access to knowledge, for instance, the same books and journals. Pulling off an empirically sophisticated study may then also be beyond many people's means, and let's not even get started on the precarious situation that many young scholars find themselves in today and their constant pressure to publish, but with little time or support to do so in a satisfactory manner. Then there's the fact that more and more scholars around the world have to communicate their findings in English, even when English is not their first language, or their second, or their third. Can we then really judge the sophistication of their argument by the same standards we might apply to the work of a native speaker who was trained at, for example, an Oxbridge institution? So keep that diversity in mind and your privilege in check. Balance the need for quality with the need to enable everyone access to academic debates. Don't be these eggs. Be these eggs. Okay, I may have overextended the metaphor there, but the point is, letting your privilege blind you is a thumbs down. Onwards to the second most important thing you should do, and that is help the author. Your task is to encourage the author to do the best work they can, so try to identify the value in their project, even if you have to look really, really hard. Identify what works and tell them that. Then identify what doesn't quite work and why. Is something not relevant? Is something missing? Is the argument one-sided? Are some of the statements not supported by the evidence? Does the conclusion maybe not follow from the study? Or possibly the language is unclear or the structure confusing? In each case, you need to lend the author a hand and also tell them how to fix the problem. Give them actionable, practical advice on what they can do. What can they do to improve? What would need to happen so that they can make this their best contribution on this topic? And remember, some contributions might not be good, but rejecting or failing them is always only the nuclear option. If you can help the person turn the contribution around and turn it into something that works, then you should always pick that option instead. Sure, it's more work on your part, but it beats blowing up someone's hard work categorically. So, helping the author? That's a thumbs up. What then is the number one thing you should never do? Well, it's being rude. You'd think this should go without saying, but it really doesn't. Something strange happens when people get to judge each other anonymously. A look at most YouTube comment sections will illustrate that nicely, but academic peer reviewing is sadly often not that different from those aggressive online comments and those users that are venting their frustrations on Twitter, which is never appropriate and certainly not helpful. So don't write in anger, don't attack the author, and importantly, don't get personal. Academia is full of toxic behaviors. Don't add more of the same. So, in case this wasn't clear, being rude is a massive thumbs down. Finally, here is the number one thing you should do. Be a fan of the author. Not this kind of fan, though that might be helpful too. This kind of fan. The kind of fan who wants their team to succeed. Team author. Be in their corner, assist them. You want them to perform well. You want to be able to celebrate their successes. So tell them what inspired you about their work. What did they get right? And why did it matter? In short, being a fan of the author gets a big thumbs up. Now that we've covered the do's and don'ts of peer reviewing, what should a good peer review actually contain? Here are some tips of what you might want to include and how you could structure such a peer review in order for it to be the most effective. So here's what I include when I write a peer review. I start with a brief summary of what the work is about. What question does it try to answer, and what does it do in order to get its answers? With what academic fields does it engage? What is its central finding or argument? All of this is important because we're trying to give an editor or instructor advice, and that requires some context. Next, I spell out what worked. What was particularly compelling or elegant? What was novel? What was impressive? These are the things that the author may want to home in on even more, especially if you're recommending that they revise their work further. As a third step, I tell them what didn't work for me just yet. I tell them where I see shortcomings, but also what I would do to address them. Sometimes this may be as simple as simply dropping an argument, or rearranging a section, or rephrasing an awkward point. At other times it might mean more substantial additional research, but then it is even more important to assist with actionable advice and encouragement rather than demanding work that is clearly unrealistic and doesn't serve to get this piece of work to the finish line. And finally, I conclude by stressing what the main achievement of this piece was, and where I see potential for it to really contribute to academic debate. So I close with a note of encouragement. You may recognize this as the sandwich method of giving feedback, and that's because it is. Most people don't really like their bologna straight up, they like it packaged in some nice greens and crunchy bread. So if you're truly trying to reach the author and be a help to them, tick these boxes, and I can guarantee you, you'll be making an academic somewhere very, very happy. That concludes my advice on how to conduct a peer review. Now, let me just say one more time that peer reviewing is a fundamental part of academic work. It's a huge responsibility and a service to the community. So if you get asked to provide such a review, make sure that you do the best you can to do it justice. And if you are receiving peer review feedback, try to remember that the folks who are writing that feedback for you are often doing so under massive time pressure. They're probably taking time out of their busy schedule for free in order to comment on your work and help you out. And maybe that review feedback isn't always so good. Maybe it isn't exactly what you had in mind, or it contains bits that are unhelpful. You can still go over it and try to tease out the parts that assist you and cut those folks a little bit of slack. We don't know what is going on in their lives at that moment. I hope that you have enjoyed this short academic skills video. If you are interested in additional tips, feel free to take a look at my website, politicseastasia.com, where I have provided additional resources both on academic work and on studying East Asia. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in another video.